glad to be here.
Yeah.
Before I'll answer a question you might have, which is, why are we talking popcorn after the sale's already begun? In part, this is part of my wood badge ticket, and I met with John last week, and he suggested it might be helpful to present to the roundtable. So it wasn't even an idea until last week, so here we go. I'm Tim Hateman. I have boys in both Troop and Pack 599, and I love popcorn. We love popcorn. We love selling popcorn.
I'll put you in the dark with too.
I'm curious, by show of hands, how many of you are with units that have ever sold popcorn? So pretty much everyone. How many have actually set up show and sells? So not nearly as many. So maybe half. Well, my hope today is to encourage units to sell, because I think it's a fantastic fundraiser, and as a Troop and Pack, we've raised a lot of money, and I think it's great. And for the people that actually already do the fundraiser, I'd like to encourage you to try show and sells, because sometimes it's the best way to sell. I think it's the best way to sell. It depends, I suppose, what tactics you have and what approach you have, but I think it's a great way to sell a lot of popcorn. So, yeah, I'm gonna dance. I'm gonna skip pretty much past the take order and the door to door, because we don't do that much of that. We actually, we have some family and friends that we take orders from, but most of the sales that we do, and I'm talking more with my boys. I have 2 boys in the Troop and 1 in the Pack that do primarily show and sells. I know that there are some units and some boys or scouts that actually do really well in door to door, particularly in neighborhoods where the houses are pretty close, the driveways are short, and you can get from one house to the next very quickly, and they produce a lot of sales there. So I'm actually going to jump right to show and sells. Show and sells are essentially where you actually get product ahead of time, and you set up a table, usually at some type of store, and you sell the product right on the spot. The main steps for show and sells are reserving the location, which sometimes can be difficult, scheduling the scouts and the adults, placing the order and picking up the popcorn, and then actually executing the sale, recording your results, and tracking your inventory. So, when it comes to locations, it depends on when you sell as to where you may find a good location. The spring sale, at least in the last couple of years, it's been difficult because Pick and Save, which has often been a really good place to sell, has decided to reserve the springtime for the Girl Scouts that sell cookies for the entire month of March. So it's been more difficult, but in the fall, they've actually set aside Pick and Save for the Scouts, the Boy Scouts, and Cub Scouts. We've also found really good locations to be like Ace Hardwares are oftentimes very good. Places like Gander Mountain have been really helpful and good. Some of the Walgreens are really good. And you can call other places. Some that pretty much are a guaranteed no would be Targets, have always been no, and Sendix have always been no. I don't know of anybody that's been able to actually get into those, but if you have, let me know. When do you sell? You usually sell on the weekends. The best weekend to sell is certainly the Blitz weekend, which is the first weekend. If you're able to actually sell on the Friday of the Blitz weekend, it's wonderful. It's really, really busy usually wherever you go.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate. What's a Blitz weekend, Tim?
Yeah, the Blitz weekend is the first weekend of the sale. And the Blitz weekend is just the term that I suppose the council came up with to try to blitz the area with popcorn sellers.
Okay.
And
This
they're,
last weekend in our case?
right, exactly.
Okay.
It was 2 weekends ago. Yep, so yep. Yeah, the sale started on the 4th. And it's good to get out there because after a little while, after a couple weeks into the sale, the area is saturated, and so they've purchased it from their neighbor or their boys or scouts have gotten out there and already reached them. So if you want to hit a high number, quickly, you can hopefully get out in the first weekend and do that. And then, as far as scheduling a location, you might wanna know how many should I schedule, how long should I schedule them for? It really kind of depends on the next item, which is how motivated are your scouts and the parents of your scouts and your leaders to actually get out and sit there and sell popcorn. One thing about scheduling, you also wanna know, is this gonna be, are we selling, you always wanna know when you call a location, are you gonna be having sitting outdoors or indoors? It's obviously super important to know that, especially if you're gonna be outdoors and uncovered, and you may actually get rained on. So you'll wanna know up front when you schedule a place, where you're gonna sit. And like, for example, this past weekend, I was outdoors with my son, but it was actually covered. It was on a sidewalk in front of the building that had, where the roof came over us. So I brought my canopy, not realizing until I got there I didn't need it, but as I say, be prepared to sit outside. So hand in hand with scheduling the location, you can go ahead and advance, is scheduling the scouts and the adults. You want to know, like, who wants to sell, which of your boys want to sell, and perhaps equally as important, maybe more important, which parents are willing to actually sit there with the scouts and sell popcorn. Because I think, especially with younger boys, you have to have an adult there all the time. My oldest is only 12, so we've never even gotten to the point where we even considered having someone sit out there and sell by themselves. I imagine that if you're maybe 16 or something like that, you could probably set it up on your own. I haven't gotten to that point, but but you're going to want to know what kind of commitment do you have from the parents to actually sit out there and help the boys by sitting there, basically. And then who do you have in the unit that's going to help with getting the product, with maintaining the product inventory, with making sure that the product is delivered to the show and sell, with making sure that it's picked up after the show and sells, and then handling how are you going to transition from each seller the product. So is someone going to be in charge of figuring out what was sold for the last, say, 2-hour block, making sure it gets handed off to the next scout and parents to the next block? You really need to coordinate how is that going to be handled. You definitely don't want to have a scout that needs to leave with their parent that needs to leave and then realize like the next scout didn't show up. And what do they do? What do they do with the product? What do they do with the money? Obviously you want to maintain integrity of that whole process. And I would suggest actually maintaining separate sheets for each boy. Don't try to put the sales from your unit on one sheet for multiple boys. So the process to ordering, and go ahead and advance.